Progressivism is a societal cancer. Oh, hi there. Welcome to the Freedom Alternative. Let me tell you a story. In 1966, Charles de Gaulle pulled France out of NATO and ordered that all American troops on French soil be evacuated. In one of the few moments of clarity in his career, American President Lyndon Johnson replied something to the effect of, "Does that include the over 60,000 American soldiers buried in France for defending your nation in World War I and World War II?" De Gaulle died 5 years later, and till the end of his life, he did not answer these questions. Now, why am I bringing this story up? Because, if there are any things constant when it comes to France in the last 100 or so years, there are essentially these two things. One, rampant disdain for America and Americans, and two, constant situations when America and American soldiers pull France out from the deep shit that France herself got into it in the first place. In case you haven't found out already, another jihadi went full Muslim in France, this time in a train traveling from Paris to Amsterdam. Fucking hell, I traveled with that train once. But anyway, just like in World War I and World War II and a few recessions, the Indochina crisis, the Algerian crisis, and a few others, a few brave Americans had to save the day for France to prevent yet another tragedy, Charlie Hebdo style. Now, as a side note, the Charlie Hebdo attack seems to have finally reached its target. The magazine has now gone full dhimmi and no longer offends Islam. More details here. So, when our jihadi went full Muslim on the train, the passenger tried to run away. Except for these three young, straight, cis American men, or three oppressors as progressives would say, who went towards the oppressed POC Ayub el-Hazani to grab his weapon and neutralize the danger, which they actually did. Now, not only these three men's grit and courage needs to be commended, but it needs to be rubbed in the faces of every single left-wing prick in France who spends most of the time disparaging anything American and engage in agitprop to tarnish and libel America's image in France. Now, on one hand, some of you may say that, there is such thing called the bystander effect and it applies, and I should not be too harsh on the rest of the passengers. And, that's actually a fair point. On the other hand, whilst indeed apathy is being transmitted in such moments, so is courage. In fact, once these three men acted, two other men rushed to help too, and that was another British guy and a Frenchman. Now, notice that I insist on saying men, and that's because someone has to say it. When shit hits the fan, in situations like this, the cuddling leftist egalitarian feminist French bullshit dies in an instant. And there is no empowered feminist woman to be found once bullets start flying around. And if any feminists are watching this, you'd better start internalizing this message. And this is especially true for Swedish and French feminists. But what pissed me off and indeed determined me to make this video in the first place is the fact that the French services already knew this jihadi, and instead of picking him off the streets, they were still debating on whether they should do that or not, and with great care not to breach his precious human rights. Because in France, just like in most Schengen area countries, immigrants have human rights. The native local populace does not. Isn't Europe nice? And what's even more cringeworthy is the European media that is still unsure on whether to call the jihadi, well, a jihadi. Because, you see, that's not progressive. Sure, it may be a helpful information, but it's not progressive, so it must be wrong. The dilemma is even higher for the British media, who routinely calls Islamic thugs using the moniker Asians. But this jihadi is Moroccan, and they can't call him African because that's not progressive either. So they chose to call him the gunman who attempted to commit a massacre and buried his ethnic background somewhere deep in the article where most readers don't get to go in the first place. The Telegraph was actually full of integrity and got first in line to print the "He Didn't Do Nothing" article with an interview with the jihadi's father, who, of course, told us the usual claptrap. "Oh, but he was a good boy, and no one can explain how could this happen." Except one can explain. His mates explained quite clearly that this guy and his brothers dreamed about being jihadis long before this punk even knew where France was on the map, let alone get there. The French media has had to at least print the statements of the President François Hollande, who praised the American man for saving his citizens when the French services did not. But other than that, the French media was quite shy in at least admitting that this was indeed an act of Islamic terrorism. And, these are the standards nowadays. In the past, I would have expected the fierce French media to go after the authorities, demand action, demand the guilty ones be punished. Nowadays, even writing the words Islamic terrorism is a debatable act. What's really sad, though, is that on the long run, France has slim chances to address the root problem of this whole debacle, as long as France quite literally has no borders right now, and Frenchmen are already a minority in their own country. But, I'll talk about that a bit more in the next video, which will also come out today. So, what do you guys think? Am I being too harsh on the French here? I don't know. Maybe I am. Or maybe I'm too moderate. Talk to you guys later. Thanks for watching.